Hello and welcome to your favorite YouTube channel, Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Jim Rugg.
I'm Justine Cleaves.
I'm Bree Piscor.
I'm Jim Mafood.
I'm Michelle Fife.
I'm Chris Pitzer.
Your moderator.
I didn't know I was going to be moderator till just right now.
Chris.
Well, first of all, thank you all for joining us here to celebrate the legacy of Ed Piskor. We're going to hopefully have some laughs today, tell some stories about some of our favorite times with Ed around comics. And with that in mind, I figure the place to start, of course, is Heroes Con. One of my favorite moments with Ed here, and this is our favorite show, is whenever we started doing Cartoonist Kayfabe, one of our plans was to interview cartoonists. You know, we wanted to cover comics in every way that we could think of and kind of share our love of comics. And one of our white whales, if you will, was the artist behind Faust, Tim Vigil. And we were very excited that Tim, who does not do a lot of interviews, agreed to do an interview with us. But you never know how these interviews are going to go, or even if they are going to go. So towards the end of the day at the show, one of us went to attach ourselves to Tim Vigil to make sure that, you know, we didn't let him out of our sight. Exactly. And that meant taking him to dinner, get to know him a little bit before it was time to actually go do the interview.
And now a little backstory. Ed and Jim have been very kind to me at Heroes Con. And I published Jim, but you know, Ed and I were just friends. But by being kind, they would give me floor space in their room, so a cheap place to stay. So keep that in mind as Jim tells his story.
That's right. So we're going to do the interview back in our hotel room. You know, we had the lights set up, we had kind of a little spot set up. The spot was the far wall away from the entrance. So it would be Tim Vigil with his back against that wall. And if he wanted to get to the door, we would have been, thinking of the space in between him and the door. Chris had not gone to dinner with us. We weren't really sure where Chris was because we were focused on this Tim Vigil interview. So we sit down, we turn the lights on, we have Tim in position whenever the bathroom door opens.
So I think they're still at dinner. I go to the bathroom, and a little too much information, but when I go to the bathroom, I'm like George Costanza. I like to get free and loose, so I take my shirt off. So I hear the door open, not the bathroom door, but the hotel door, and then a quick knock, knock, knock. I'm like, occupied, and Ed goes, oh, no problem, man, That's the only thing here. I think it's just Ed in there, right? So I do my business, I get done, I open the door, I come out shirtless, and there's Tim Vigil. And Ed's eyes get all big. He's like, this isn't nothing weird, man. This is nothing weird. Yes. Because I'm a rather hairy individual underneath these clothes.
This is already an incredible panel.
Was this the very first shoot?
It was one of the very first shoots, and let me tell you, if you haven't seen it, you can see how that story ends by watching the Tim Vigil interview. Is on the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel. But
Jim, that's one of my, sorry to interrupt, that's one of my favorite interviews you guys ever did. I've watched it numerous times because Tim is such a interesting, fascinating character in comics. Is Tim here? Okay, I can talk about him then. There's a crazy moment in the interview where Tim has this realization where he says something like, sometimes I don't do well at shows or whatever, and he was like, I don't know, people don't like me. And Ed goes, we like you, Tim. And it's such a like pure moment. It was like the perfect timing and the perfect sentiment at that time, and it was like a real thing to say, and it was just something that I think about where I'm like, Eddie P dropping knowledge on and comfort on Tim Vigil, of all people. Like this is awesome. This is crazy.
I actually, once I saw what they were doing and put my shirt on, I was going to leave because this was their thing, right? And so I'm going towards the door, and then Jim goes to the bathroom, and as Jim goes to the bathroom, he looks at me and he goes like this. He's so happy that Tim Vigil is there, and they're getting ready to interview him. And I was like, I gotta stay. It's one of my best decisions I've made in comic film. So thank you for that.
Well, thanks for being there, Chris. I feel like you set the tone when you came out of that bathroom topless. But we're very fortunate to be sharing the podium here with Ed's sisters, and it's no secret Ed's obsession with comics. It did not begin with cartoonist kayfabe. It did not begin with WYSIWYG or any of his collaborations with Harvey Pekar or Jay Lynch. I believe that he may have been obsessed with comics from the day both of you were born, and I was curious about some of that, if he pushed comics on you, if he made you color his comics. Do you guys have any stories about Ed making comics or pushing them on you?
He definitely, I don't know if you can hear me, he definitely pushed comics on us a lot. I wasn't allowed to read little kid books. I had to read, Batman, which there was my obsession with Batman, and like X-Men, Wolverine was my favorite too. And yeah, he tried to get me like I think it was like on Sundays, to be like drawing school Sundays, and it happened for like maybe 2 weeks, but I have no artistic ability. I draw stick figures, that's all, but so he didn't really make me draw too much, but maybe Bree got it a little bit more.
I'm definitely not the best artist whatsoever, but every time we'd be at my parents' house and, Lucy would come over, our niece, we would just draw, and I was not good at all, but he would always make me try to be better.
Cheer me on in my stick figure pieces that I would make for my kids. So
we tried making Mario the one time, and I got the face down, but the body, it was not Mario. But
Of course, Ed would force you to do video game.
Video games.
Like, if it's not comics,
yeah.
it's video games.
For sure. A lot of horror movies, had to draw Jason every time,
Nice.
It was simple, but, I could do that.
And G.I. Joe was a big one.
Oh, yeah.
My Barbies weren't allowed to marry Ken. They had to marry G.I. Joe and Wolverine. So.
Oh, yeah. When I was 15, 16, he wanted me to help him color hip-hop. I did maybe 2 pages, and I was like, I'm not as fast as you. This is a lot. So shout out to my brother. I have 2 pages that I colored.
Oh wait, it made the cut? Like it's printed?
I couldn't tell you which ones they were. I am awful. I do have a
I
photo
wonder if
of
you
it,
redid
but
them.
yeah, honestly, because it was, you outlined it, and then you just made it whatever color you wanted, and then he would go back in and like fix that outline, and recolor it the way it was supposed to be. But just practicing,
I
and
actually think I have pictures. I have to go through, but I think
Yeah.
he has pictures of that.
there's some more.
Yeah.
Michelle and Jim, I'm kind of curious, thinking about this and thinking about some of the stories that we all have with Ed over the years. Do you guys remember meeting Ed or kind of like getting to know Ed in that even amongst cartoonists, I feel like he has sort of a singular obsession that not all cartoonists have. Do you remember like recognizing a kindred spirit or time together when you guys were sort of bonding over comics?
Last time I spoke to Ed, we talked about that, how none of us remembered exactly where we met, and probably at a convention, probably Mocha or SPX or something, but we were definitely aware of one another. And I had one of his earliest zines that he just, when he had this style where he would just stipple everything, and it was insane looking. Like, to me, it was like, who is this guy? This is awesome. Then eventually I met him because of our shared love of all things comics. So it's like, oh, this guy's obsessed with something in the same way I am. And later I found out even more so. Where I would just take a break sometimes, he would just like barrel through and love comics. Which, it's funny you mentioned that he kind of pushed you in when you were a kid drawing, because in a way I kind of felt that as a peer, as an adult, as a professional. It was just sort of like, it was unspoken. It wasn't like we would talk about this stuff, but it was like just seeing his work and his evolution and us talking about styles and artists that we like, who we like, and he just made me get better in a weird way. I don't even know quite how to articulate that, because it's such a weird concept.
He's definitely a hype man.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
a
yeah.
good way of putting
Yeah.
it. That's awesome.
I mean, like, I even started couponing recently, and he's like, yeah, see what else you can get. Like,
Yeah, so he was definitely an inspiration from the earliest days, because he's a peer. You know, he's my generation, he's our generation. You know, so our trajectory sort of, it's like it mirrors itself almost. Like, we like the same things, we approach the same things, we had the same sort of drive, and yeah, it was great.
Yeah, I mean, I met Ed when he still had hair. So it's like I feel like I met him.
okay, so
When the-
that was like the early 2000s.
Yeah. I feel like he was almost like still a kid, and because I'm 7 years older than him, I think. So we immediately had the connection though of indie comics and hip hop and music obsession, of course. So seeing him go from WYSIWYG to like Hip Hop Family Tree and crafting his own style, his own vision, his own voice. I mean, that was always the common link. And you know, it's such an odd thing, because like when your job is to wake up every day and look at a blank piece of paper and figure out like, how am I gonna rock that piece of paper to, you know, make something, make a difference, you know, cause a reaction in people. That's a very odd and particular, challenging way to live. So when you meet someone else that's doing that, it's like an instant connection, you know? You have an instant kindred spirit. Sorry. But yeah, I mean, it was that's what the cool thing was. It's like it becomes an unspoken bond between you and these kind of people, where you might not talk for like 2 or 3 months or whatever, but when you see each other, it's the instant you just catch up where you left off. And that was the best thing about my friendship with Ed, was like, we would forget to talk about like normal shit, like, how's your life going? And we would immediately start up with like, dude, I inked like 3 pages today, and like I'm working on this, and this, you know. And so that's a special thing to have that with a fellow creative, you know.
That was the same. Like when I went to Pittsburgh last, and we had a mission, and that's just to go bin diving, right? And talk about process, but really it was just that focus of like, we got to hit the stores. And to the point where, you know, if you're with family or your loved one or whatever, you kind of put that to the side, you kind of curb that impulse to do that. But he and I, we just locked in like, oh, after dinner, we're going to go right back. And then the next day in the morning, we're going to do that. And then we're going to spend hours, and everyone else could just wait.
Yeah.
And I've never even done that really with anyone else. Like, it was that intense. It was fucking great.
We
You were there, Jim. You hit it up a
Yeah,
little bit.
yeah,
Like, you had some.
everything Michelle is saying is true. I was there. I did see them being very obsessive in their bin diving. I'll tell you another story about bin diving with Ed. You know, now and then we're very lucky in the Pittsburgh area. We have a number of great stores, and we have a lot of opportunities to go find dollar boxes and weird sales, and a lot of great comic stuff happens there. I don't know that there's a better comics town if you're a comic book fan. But now and then, some of these sales will pop up, and there used to be a quarter sale that would pop up about once a year at one of the stores that we liked. And, you know, you want to be the first one that goes through these bins, right? Because sometimes the best comic, there's only one copy, so you don't want to step on that and let everybody in. So I went to the quarter sale and didn't tell Ed about it. And, well, hold on. Because Ed also went to the quarter sale and didn't tell me about it. And we met walking down the hallway to the quarter sale. So I wasn't going to pull one over on him when it came to that. And then we would see how many comics we could pack in the box, because you'd have to be a sucker to pay a quarter, right?
I learned that trick from you.
A lot of these sales, you can pay X amount of money and fill a box, but you really want to stuff that box. And then we would do the math afterwards and try to figure out, oh, I got my comics for 18 cents a copy. And you used to try to outdo each other with that too. Ed was very competitive, so we did pretty well at these sales.
That's great.
Another fun Heroes memory, and Chris, I think you can vouch for this one. After we had started coming to Heroes, we decided we would try to negotiate, like, we get a carload of Pittsburgh cartoonists coming here. Maybe Heroes could give us a room, help save our costs, but we would also produce maybe 3 or 4 artists. We would all just stay in the same room if they would hook us up.
Our younger years, too.
Yeah. So this was great for us because it's hard to make money at cons. You're paying for a table, you're paying for food and gas, and if you're self-publishing, you're paying for the books. Now you're paying for a hotel room. How many books do you got to sell to cover all of this, right? And we're trying to do this and make a living with it. So if we can negotiate a free room, that would be great. And Shelton, who runs Heroes, one of the saints of comics, he agrees to this. We do a lot of planning in our head to pitch this, and the answer was just yes. There was no real actual negotiation. But we kept that deal running for several years, and maybe a friend would join us, maybe not from Pittsburgh, but hey, you could just crash in our room. And it got to the point where we had more and more friends in that room until one year we had 6 or 7 people staying in one hotel room. And we found out when we were checking out that Shelton had given us 2 rooms that were adjoining each other. There was a door between them. Nice. But we didn't find that out until Monday when we were checking out. So it was 6 or 7 strong all weekend. And when I say strong, it was very, very strong in that room. But I don't remember Ed ever complaining about it because, we were here, that was the point. It didn't really matter if there were 6 or 7 of us and everybody's snoring and smells bad. We were where we wanted to be. And
it was about the comics.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I didn't exaggerate that, right?
No, you're spot on, man. I think Shelton was a little upset that we didn't use that other room.
Understandably so.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, did I?
No.
So, the other thing that I think about with Cartoonist Kayfabe is just these stories of we hear so much from people that Ed encouraged them, make more comics, right? It's one of the slogans and stuff. And I often wonder, how much of that came from your parents? Because my parents weren't so keen on me making comics.
Oh my goodness.
But one of the big differences, and Ed would often show artwork, was your parents did seem to facilitate that.
Oh, yeah. So Bree came around when I was 11, so she wasn't there for the art school days. But my parents did everything in their power, anything. I mean, my dad was working crazy hours out of the country just to make sure that he was in art classes and art schools, and his art teacher in high school was amazing and got him into competitions just to push him out there, and he was winning all these awards. So, and my mom's really good at drawing too, so they would draw together, but they never ever once gave him any idea that he couldn't make it happen. So, and I mean, I have all these notebooks to back it up. I can remember going to Packatans, this old craft store. I showed you that one sketchbook. I said, oh my God, I literally remember buying this at Packatans, this exact one. And he man, he was just so wild with it. But there's notebooks and notebooks. And like I said, my parents never once discouraged him. And when he wanted to go to Joe Kubert School, they found a way to make it happen. And he went. So.
I mean, he had his whole art studio in the garage
yeah.
of our house. So, you start somewhere.
And there was no heat. We just had a little space heater down there. So it would be Pittsburgh gets pretty cold. So
spiders.
Those 12-degree days, I'm down there, my other brother's down there playing with his wrestlers. I'm playing with my Barbies, and he's drawing, making us listen to hip-hop music and hearing all these words we probably shouldn't be hearing at that age. But we didn't care. We loved it.
Yeah.
This might be a good time. I don't know if everybody knows what you guys are doing with the Ed Piskor legacy and sharing. You talk about these sketchbooks of work and stuff. Where can people follow to see some of this work?
So I have an Instagram account. It's Ed Piskor's Legacy on Instagram. So we're actually going live on there right now. And I've been posting pictures from his sketchbooks, just pictures of him from when he was little, all pictures of us, and just everything. And when the August 24th, we're hosting our own EDP Comic Con in Pittsburgh, and it's starting off pretty small in a fire hall, but hopefully one day we can get it to be something like this. So yeah, you could definitely follow along on there. And we did make a Facebook group too, but I feel like Facebook is Facebook. So, but Instagram's definitely the way to get a hold of us.
And by the way, your family is amazing. I wish my family could be like your family. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
The one time one of the trips to Pittsburgh was Pix, and
Which I should say is a small press show
Yeah.
that ran in Pittsburgh
Yeah,
for several years.
At the time, I think Bill Boychelle helped put it on, right, from Copacetic Comics. And so I made the trip up. You know, we went to dinner, and of course, I think Gary Groth was there that year from Fantagraphics. And we all ended up, was it a Vietnamese place where the food was like pink?
Yes.
Or this one meal was pink, so we all ordered it because it was pink.
And also because that's what Ed told us to order.
Right. Ed knew this place. He's like, you got to get this
Was
food.
it Mayling's? It was Mayling's. That's where we went. We went there for like everything.
Yeah. And so, but part of it is just experiencing Pittsburgh, like through Ed and Jim and everyone else. But one of my favorite memories is going back to Ed's studio because his dad had just bought 5 long boxes.
Oh yeah, he would just go to like
It was a
random yard
sale.
sales.
Yeah, it was a
and,
yard
like,
sale. And he's
yeah.
like, I got some comics for you,
He would
son.
just dump them on and be like, "Here you go, kid."
Yeah. And so it was
He
like,
still
I think
has
Ed,
them all. Don't worry, he still
and
has
I don't
everyone.
think Ed hadn't even gone through them yet, so it was like we were going through them with Ed that night. It was great.
Yeah, and I can tell you that is not the only time that a gathering of cartoonists in Pittsburgh ended at Ed Piskor's house going through comic books,
Right.
artist editions, whatever the case may be. But, you know, talking shop, which was something that he was quick to do and would always talk about, it's almost a universal language. You know, if you ended up at dinner with some cartoonists, it was not long before you're all synced up and speaking the same language, which was something that I feel Ed took a lot of pride in, but also was excited by. You know, it was something that we tried to do with Cartoonist Kayfabe, was to have those conversations and also to encourage everybody else who loved comics to have those conversations. You know, we tried to share wisdom. Ed was, as WYSIWYG will attest, was obviously very a child of the internet, was influenced by hacker culture, and felt that we should share this information. You know, if we know something, let everybody else know that stuff, because he learned so much that way from people that shared that information with him freely, and it was something that he was very excited to do. And with that in mind, I thought I would talk about a couple of the things that I learned from Ed. You know, we've traveled to a lot of shows over the years, and I admire his body of work, his work ethic, his creativity, all of these things. And I used to kind of have a checklist of like, what you need to do to be a good cartoonist. You've got to be a good writer, you've got to write characters, you've got to be able to draw this and that. But one of the things that I learned from Ed was vision. You know, a lot of the projects that he made, and I would start with something like Hip Hop Family Tree, before he signed a contract with a publisher, he had a vision that he wanted those to be like the old 70s Marvel Treasury editions, because he really loved the Muhammad Ali Superman Treasury edition. And he would tell me, you know, like when he was a little kid, some of his friends would have one comic in the house, and that was the comic. And, you know, he sort of had this idea that that's how Hip Hop Family Tree should look. And whenever he was negotiating with several publishers that wanted that work, he made sure that that was part of his deal. You know, you can ask for anything before you sign that contract. But Ed did this again and again, whether it was something like Red Room, even WYSIWYG has these qualities of really visionary comics, things that he had an idea for without necessarily saying, oh, this book was successful, I'm going to copy that. You know, when Walking Dead's successful and a bunch of zombie books come out, that is not what he was doing. He was picturing something that didn't exist and then basically willing it into existence and finding the partners and publishers and things that were not saying, oh no, we can't do that, but rather were assisting him in that vision. And it's something I think about with every comic I make now. You know, this idea of imagining this thing that does not exist yet. You don't have to follow somebody else's example, but rather you can actually have a vision and really work as hard as it takes to make that a reality. And there is no better example than Hip Hop Family Tree. You know, it's translated and licensed around the world. It's a bestseller in many, many countries. And it's something that before it came to be, a lot of people weren't sure, how is this going to work? But he kind of had that idea in addition to the actual tell a good story, do good art, but also kind of dream of these projects that you want to make. And I feel like if you're a maker out there in the audience, like it's something you can apply to all the stuff you do, beyond comics even, you know, whatever business you're in, I feel like that's something that is portable. And Ed would draw from other businesses and examples, you know, he's constantly learning. We used to, we did spend a lot of hours in the car, and Ed would sort of take pride that the radio was never on. We weren't listening to hip hop. We weren't listening to music. We were strategizing.
No smooth jazz while you're driving down
shop.
the street.
Music in the background.
Yeah. All right, relax. That's not so bad. Smooth jazz could be good. I don't know. I'm just saying.
But we would often debate things like we had access virtually, you know, we, and I say all of us now have access to virtually everything that's been written and recorded and movies and all of this stuff in a way that when we were little kids it was hard to find. And we would sort of argue about things like, I'm kind of a trash culture. I enjoy a lot of trash. And Ed would think like, you should listen to the best music because we know what it is and we can get it now. You should read the best books, you know, especially as a creator. And it was something that I still think about a lot, you know, if it does damage with some of the kind of the junkier stuff that I consume. But you know, Ed was constantly teaching himself, whether it was to be a better artist or just educating himself to be a better storyteller, better person.
It really was cartoonist kayfabe without being recorded, those car trips. And you got a reputation as being somewhat confrontational about, I mean, opinions and thoughts. I mean, it's nothing to be, I mean, you were passionate. That's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
But,
And-
What do you mean? Like the car ride was, it got heated, it got tense?
well, just
because you were
about like
going back and forth?
philosophies on comics and things. Or just the way he would question you, it seemed like he wasn't really being confrontational, but he wanted to know, what did you think about this?
He also liked to entertain himself, so a lot of those car rides were me driving, Tom Scioli in the passenger seat, and Ed in the back seat, and Ed would sort of throw the topic out, and then watch Tom and I have essentially a cage match for the next half hour driving down the road.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, but you know, Ed was also into junk culture, but he never, I know what you mean, right? But he never like punched down or criticized it in this evil, nasty way. He sort of like, he could see the beauty in some of that stuff, and that's what he talked about. Like, we have shared taste in terrible comics that we could objectively say, oh, that's just not good. But this element about it is beautiful, and we get a value from that. So when everyone else is like shitting on this one thing, we're like, but wait, hold on, let's give it a fair shake. Like, it's actually kind of beautiful in its own way. And he was great at that. Like, and I really connected with him over that specific detail.
Do you have any favorite examples that you guys used to bond over? Or
Well, I think the main one is this polarizing figure in comics, Rob Liefeld. I'm sure you all know him. And, you know, that's sort of, he's like the mega populist artist for comics, right? But me and Ed really bonded over that shit. Like, it was great. And it wasn't any sort of funny, ironic thing. It's like, no, we love this stuff. It affected us as kids. We carried that inspiration over as professionals. And we know it's fun. We identified the elements that we liked, and we just concentrated on that. The other stuff, we could ignore it. It doesn't matter. What matters is that it's special to us. And yeah, I don't know. That's special.
Jim, do you remember comics that Ed would slide your way or turn you on to or disagree with you about?
Man, I mean, we always bonded over the more fringe type stuff like Faust. And before I went to Japan in 2019, he had just been there like a couple months before me, or just a month before me. So, I mean, I've already told this story online or whatever, but he helped me plan my trip, introduced me to the right people to hang out with while I was there. But he also gave me a list of like the Kazi Shinobu, if I'm pronouncing that right, and some like crazy shit where he was like, hook up with Aki, and he will take you to these places to get these books. And so I was getting those books. And then as I was over there, I would like text him at night like, dude, it's so awesome over here, by the way, and all these people are great, and I got this, and this, and now my luggage is this is becoming a sensitive issue of like the luggage, like how do I fit all this manga into, how am I gonna travel home with this? He had some specific strategy of like, he would buy luggage when he was over there specifically to
Because the luggage he
travel
took-
back with, or
The
some
luggage he took, he stole from me and my brother.
Okay.
Literally, he said, I'm going to borrow this. And I never seen it again until recently. And
Yes.
I'm looking, and my mom's like, okay, I need luggage for San Diego. I said, wow, here, you can have mine, Mom.
Yes, that's not
Now I know
surprising.
he's buying more.
Yeah.
That was the reason he wore white shirts as well. So he could just leave the shirts in the hotel and put the comics in the luggage.
Right.
Because he can just buy more white
Wait,
shirts.
really?
That makes so much sense.
Yeah, no, he was like, he told me, that's why I do this.
That's so awesome. That is.
Yeah, he's like, leave your
so
good
good.
T-shirts
I-
at home. Go over there with just whatever crap you bought from Target, and then if you have to, as you're packing, just leave those Target shirts.
In the hotel room,
And
yeah.
you have the one clean shirt to fly home with, obviously. And he also had a thing with like showering immediately before, or some
Oh, yeah.
program of like, I don't leave the hotel room after I shower when I'm flying or whatever that day. These were very specific travel tips that really worked out, and up to him being like, you got to get this Wi-Fi while you're over there from this specific company, and it all worked out. So that was quite effective. And when I got back, the great thing was I was like, dude, I just got inspired by this trip of like comics over there. You can just literally do whatever you want. The craziest shit, the better. So that inspired me to make my next Girl Scout series at that time in 2020, where I'm like, I'm just going to do this crazy shit. And Ed was like, I'm going to do this crazy splatterpunk comic, this Red Room thing, because of the inspiration I got while I was over there of, yes, I can also do whatever I want. So having the excitement of a successful trip, but then talking to each other while we were making our projects after that trip. This was like a physical manifestation we were both working on of that experience. And that's like the most awesome thing you can share with people, is like the gift of inspiration. Because you can't manufacture that, like you can't sell it. It's like an organic thing that if it works, it's like the best thing ever. And that was like the magic of kayfabe, is crafting this audience of people that were like, oh shit, this show is awesome, it's historic, and I want to make more comics. Like, thank you, Jim Rugg and Ed. Thank you guys.
You know, Jim, you mentioned Ed telling you, here's a list of creators to look for whenever you go to Japan. That's exactly what we were doing on Cartoonist Kayfabe. Like, one of my favorite things that people will come up to, used to come up to us at shows and come up to me now at shows and say is, you turn me on to this artist or that artist. Because we'd be showing Rob Liefeld, and a bunch of people may know Rob Liefeld that don't know the Hernandez brothers. Man, it sounds sacrilegious for me to say that out loud. But we heard from so many people, and it would go both ways. People might tune into the Dan Clowes episodes and then maybe give Rob Liefeld a chance. And it's the same version of like, Ed would find the stuff that looked good, that he liked, and it was like, let's get that out there. Because the more people who like this stuff, the better, as opposed to, let's keep this a secret for ourselves. Like the more people who are into the comics that we like, the more likely those comics are to proliferate. And, that was a big part of Cartoonist Kayfabe, and that was a big part of what Ed wanted as well. Comics for everybody, comics everywhere. It's part of the idea of make more comics for people. And like I said, it's probably those are the two things that I hear the most at shows like this, and both things that we really took a lot of joy in hearing. And that was, I'm returning to drawing from watching your show, or I've made my first comic, or thank you for telling me about this artist or that artist. And we were at a show we were at a store in Kansas City after COVID, and Elite Comics in Kansas City. We ate barbecue when we landed there. We ate barbecue after our appearance at the store, and we get back to our hotel exhausted and meat sweating, and found out that Tom Spurgeon had passed away, the comics reporter, a friend of ours, probably if you're into comics, somebody that you guys are aware of. He was an editor at the Comics Journal for a long time, ran a daily site, Comics Reporter, where he shared comics and cartoonists and interviews and reviews and, maybe an older web version of Cartoonist Kayfabe in certain ways, and that he was sharing all kinds of comics with anybody that was interested there. And we ultimately came to Heroes. It was an off season, so it was an appearance at the Heroes Aren't Hard to Find store, one of the great comic shops in the world, and talked about Tom Spurgeon and his impact, because he touched so many lives in comics, and again, much the way that I believe Ed has touched so many lives in comics. And one of our takeaways was, there's not going to be another Tom Spurgeon. You can't replace Tom Spurgeon, but maybe everybody together can replace some of what he did. They can share that love. They can share new cartoonists with their friends, with fellow comics fans. And I feel the same way about Ed. Ed is a one of one. That mold was broken whenever God made Ed. But we can all share that enthusiasm. When we find a cartoonist that we like, when we find a comic book that we like, we can talk about that stuff. There's so much negativity on the internet. One of the things that we wanted to do was go the other way. Talk about the stuff we love. Share the stuff, grow comics in any capacity possible, because you don't have to make comics. You can be reading comics, loving comics, collecting art. All of these things, there's so many ways to interact with this great art form, and that's really what we were trying to do. And whether it was one-on-one with friends or whether it was with, whoever was watching Cartoonist Kayfabe that day, that was something that we tried to do, and I think that we did very well, and that Ed did very well, and honestly did it before Cartoonist Kayfabe, and I think that legacy is represented in this room and everybody that's watching this broadcast. So take that away from this, this kind of get together, and continue to celebrate comics and to make comics and to encourage each other in however you interact with those comics. Do you guys have anything else that you would like to say at this time?
In relation to that, when we lost Tom, I got a chance to attend his memorial, and I also got to go to Ed's memorial. My takeaway from both is just be a better person. And that's not only face-to-face, because I think that's what we tend to do, but online as well. But I would also like to thank everyone at Heroes for giving us this being who you are. Shelton, Carla, Phil, everyone.
Seth,
Adam, Sean. It's just, you're our comics family, and we love you, and it's touching. I mean, I don't know if everyone knows, but they're making Eddie P t-shirts downstairs, right?
oh yeah.
Yeah. So you can go grab a t-shirt if you did not know about that. The money goes towards Ed's legacy. It's just they're very, very kind and very warm towards everyone. That's what I want to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We just want to say thank you to everybody. Obviously, we've never done this before.
One year ago today, we were at the Taylor Swift concert.
Yeah, not at a Comic-Con.
We did not ever in a million years think that we would be here representing our brother and sitting up here for a memorial panel for him.
And everyone's just been so sweet and amazing to us. And I just thank you.
And all the kind words that you've been saying, thank you. It really means the world to us.
You guys are doing a great job.
Thank you.
You want to go buy some comics? Is that what you're looking at?
I feel like time's ticking. We're going to have the doors going to be closing on this great convention. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you for supporting the Ed Piskor family and legacy. And thank you for being comics fans. It's the reason that we're all here. So lean on each other, be a community, and be kind. And let's see if this room, how many of you out there know the marching orders? So when I count to 3, I want to hear those marching orders, and I want everybody that's watching this to be able to hear those marching orders. So all together, 1, 2, 3.
Read more comics.